What if the most potent threat to a nation's security isn't a foreign adversary, but a danger amplified from within its own sacred halls of power? In a stunning display of parliamentary confrontation, Representative Jasmine Crockett executed a calculated takedown not just of a witness's testimony, but of what she framed as a domestic propaganda machine operated by her own congressional colleagues. She didn't just suggest a difference of opinion, she levied a direct accusation that sitting members of Congress are actively peddling the Kremlin's lies, directly sabotaging crucial foreign aid and vital domestic policy in the process. This wasn't a simple hearing, it was a declaration of information war on the House floor. The chamber, meant for debate, was transformed into a courtroom where Crockett played the role of a meticulous prosecutor, armed with her opponent's own words as evidence. But how exactly did she construct her case? What tactical maneuvers did she employ to deconstruct their arguments and expose what she claims is a dangerous pipeline of disinformation flowing directly from Moscow to Washington, D.C.? And was her methodical assault ultimately effective?
First of all, I do want to clear up some actual misinformation. Dr. Snyder, when you were testifying earlier, you were actually responding to questions that were posed by another colleague from Texas. One of the questions was, who was the president in 2008? And to be clear, Obama ran in 2008, but Obama did not swear in until 2009. So when my colleague asked about invasions from Russia, actually in 2008, Russia was invading Georgia, and it was another Texan that was the president at the time, and that was George Bush. In addition to that, one of the things that my colleague did not inquire about, but I want to make sure we're clear about, is that Trump was president in 2019 when he threatened to withhold aid to the Ukrainians as they were being threatened by the Russians. So I do want to make sure that we do that. You know, what is wild to me is that this word patriot seems to be getting co-opted for propagandists, because that's what they do. All right, so we're going to talk about what my colleague from Georgia, she talked about misinformation, and I don't know what she was talking about, but nevertheless, we can look at her own tweets and we can find plenty of misinformation, but we're just going to go through one specific tweet. Now, she said that we need to work with Israel to track down the serial numbers on any U.S. weapons used by Hamas against Israel. Dr. Snyder, I may be going out on a limb, but are you aware that that was actually just propaganda that was put out, and there actually were not U.S. weapons that were being used by Hamas, as she attempted to insinuate in this tweet?
I mean, we first of all, I appreciate the clarification. I knew that the question, who were the American presidents, was going to be the toughest one I got from that side. So I appreciate your helping me out. Yes, I mean, obviously there what you have is a typical example of American-Russian messaging, where the implicit idea is supposed to be we shouldn't give weapons to Ukraine because they're going to end up going somewhere else. There's no evidence for that. It's hard to think of an example where American weapons have been leveraged with such success as on the Ukrainian battlefield.
Thank you so much. In fact, for some people, especially people that serve on the committee, they may be surprised to know that it's actually a former Russian president and Putin's sidekick, Dmitry, and I don't want to slaughter his names, I'm going to say Dmitry M., who actually she quote tweeted. See, the problem that we're having, and the reason that we're bringing up Russia as well, is because Russia is a threat as well as China. So we are not going to sit here and pretend as if it's only one or the other. But the biggest problem that we have is we have people that sit in this chamber and they spread the misinformation. If it was left in Russia or China, whatever. But the problem is that you have people that sit in positions of power, and they have a $2 million budget. You think that they would call on some staff to find out if they were telling the truth about the things that they're putting on social media, but instead it works for their rhetoric. And as we talk about rhetoric, something else that was appalling to me was this insinuation that when you look at the Ukrainians, which is why we're having problems getting the funding that Ukraine needs, is because people in this chamber push misinformation and disinformation. They want to talk about the Ukrainians got all of these Nazis. Well, let me tell you something. You can find Nazis anywhere. You can find them right here in the United States. In fact, a bunch of the people that they're calling victims and prisoners of war, also known as convicted felons from January 6th. I have an article that I'd like to enter into the record by unanimous consent that says neo-Nazi January 6th rioter pleads guilty.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. So here's the point. We have people in this chamber that are actually causing just as much a threat, if not more of a threat, to our own country. We should be talking about holding our very own accountable for the misinformation and disinformation that they are spreading, whether it's coming out of China, whether it's coming out of Russia, or whoever is peddling it. It is a problem because right now what we see is that people are dying and we cannot get the support that we need from the public because they continue to peddle lies. And I'm tired of it because I didn't come to this chamber to play games. I came to this chamber to answer to the people, the American people, and to make sure that we keep the American people safe. And if we don't get something done, as they talk about the border, I do want to be clear, the only reason we haven't gotten funding for the border is because they killed, the House Republicans here, killed the bill that they actually sent us from the Senate side. If they want to do some work, let me tell you something. The Democrats are ready, and it seems like the Senate Republicans are ready too. They just need to get to it and stop peddling Putin's lies.
Representative Jasmine Crockett's performance was not merely a series of questions. It was a masterfully constructed prosecutorial argument delivered with calculated precision on the floor of the United States Congress. Her central thesis was stark and unwavering: that the greatest threat of foreign disinformation comes not from distant troll farms, but from the credible platforms of elected American officials who amplify it. Her entire 5-minute allotment was a strategic exercise in proving this point. The structure of her questioning was deliberate and methodical, beginning with a seemingly innocuous fact check about the presidency in 2008. This initial move served a crucial purpose: to establish herself as the arbiter of facts and to subtly paint her colleagues as unreliable narrators from the outset. From there, she pivoted to her primary piece of evidence, a tweet from her colleague from Georgia. Instead of merely stating her opinion, she presented it to an expert witness, Dr. Snyder, and asked a leading question designed to elicit a specific validation. Are you aware that that was actually just propaganda? This tactic transformed her accusation from a political jab into an expert-verified fact within the hearing's record. She further strengthened this by revealing the tweet's source was a quote tweet of a high-ranking Russian official, thereby drawing a direct line from the Kremlin's messaging to her colleague's social media feed. Her strategic goal was clearly not to extract new information from the witness, who was sympathetic to her position, but to use him as a sounding board to legitimize her condemnation of her political opponents, effectively turning the hearing into a public indictment. Her demeanor was a careful balance of controlled fury and meticulous professionalism. Her tone was not shrill or overly aggressive, but rather that of a determined prosecutor laying out an airtight case. Her language was precise and impactful, using terms like misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda, not as casual insults, but as clinical diagnoses of the political rhetoric she opposed. Phrases like "what is wild to me" served to create a sense of shared exasperation with the audience, positioning her as a voice of reason against a backdrop of absurdity. This controlled yet forceful style was a strategic choice, designed to contrast with the often bombastic rhetoric of her targets. It projected an image of preparedness and intellectual rigor, suggesting her arguments were based on evidence, not emotion. This was reinforced by her sharp, almost dismissive follow-up after Dr. Snyder confirmed her point. "Thank you so much." In fact, a clear signal that she was not there for a dialogue, but to control the narrative and move to her next piece of evidence. She showed a masterful ability to adapt and react, not to the witness, but to the broader political arguments being made by her adversaries. When addressing the claim about Nazis in Ukraine, she didn't just refute it, she preempted and neutralized it by universalizing the existence of extremists, and then weaponized the point by linking it directly to the 6th of January insurrectionists, a group some of her colleagues have defended. This was a brilliant tactical pivot, turning her opponent's talking point into a condemnation of their own political allies. Ultimately, Jasmine Crockett's performance was a case study in how to prosecute a political argument in the modern media landscape. She successfully maintained absolute control over the narrative, refusing to be sidetracked or drawn into irrelevant debates. She used her limited time to build a singular, powerful argument that misinformation peddled by domestic politicians is a direct cause of legislative failure and a threat to national security, citing the stalled Ukraine aid and the defeated border bill as primary exhibits. Her closing statements were a powerful summation, directly blaming House Republicans for the legislative gridlock and framing their opposition as an extension of Vladimir Putin's agenda. The conclusion to the question posed at the beginning is therefore clear. Crockett's methodical deconstruction demonstrates that the most effective way to combat alleged propaganda from within is not through simple denial, but through a multi-pronged strategy of factual correction, evidence-based accusation, expert validation, and the relentless connection of that rhetoric to its real-world detrimental consequences. It was a declaration that in the war of information, the most dangerous battlefield might just be the chamber of Congress itself. What do you think of this strategy? Is this an effective form of political debate, or a dangerous escalation of partisan warfare? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis.